Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel. In this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first we're going to talk about Kiev, about Ukraine. We have lots of very interesting updates. First, let's discuss this article. The US has stopped selling weapons to Ukraine. That was stated by the head of the Radas Defense Committee. According to his information, the weapons from the US that were going to be sold to Ukraine, the supplies have stopped. Those companies that were supposed to transfer these weapons are now waiting because there is no decision, said Roman Kostenko. The reasons for this decision are still unknown, and everyone is waiting to see if there will be a decision so that they can at least supply weapons here for money. That was stated by him. Anyway, this information, the situation is very difficult, and for example, the French paper Le Monde published another very interesting article about this. Without US military aid, Ukraine may not hold out against Russia for more than 6 months. That was stated by Deputy Chief of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. Lieutenant General Romanenko said that this at the Munich conference. According to him, Europe cannot replace US aid. The University of Bremen believes that current supplies, if used sparingly, will last until midsummer or fall. American aid is crucial for Ukraine's air defense and missile defense, which mainly consists of Patriot systems. ATACMS are often used in deep strikes on Russian territory. The US is a major supplier of 155mm artillery shells. The US can influence the transfer of F-16 fighters by Europe, which has just begun, or also support provided in the terms of intelligence sharing and ensuring the security of Ukrainian telecommunications. So this is the situation from the Ukrainian side. And furthermore, I would like to remind you that yesterday we got another very important article. According to information we have, Elon Musk will disable free unlimited access to the Starlink satellite data transmission system for Ukrainian military personnel on the line of combat contact at the distance of up to 80 kilometers from it from March 1st. So during the next 10 days, Ukrainians will be completely blind and deaf when talking about this system. So once again, Le Monde stated that Ukrainians will be able to hold their positions for another 6 months, and after that they're going to be complete collapse. But telling the truth, I'm not sure about these numbers. I believe that Ukrainians will not be able to hold their positions for too long. For example, we continue receiving different updates about Russian production of different weapons. For example, according to the Royal United Service Institute for Defense and Security Studies, in its report, Russia plans to manufacture 750 ballistic missiles for the Iskander system and 560 He-101 air-launched cruise missiles, which means that if the Russians are able to improve their production till this level, they will be able to attack Ukraine every single day, and this is going to be a complete unstoppable nightmare. Furthermore, according to information we have, Russia plans to produce over 70,000 glide bombs in 2025. In comparison, for example, in 2024, the Russians managed to produce just 40,000, and now they're planning to produce 70,000. Obviously, the increase of production is significant. And of course, don't forget about arms deliveries from different allies. For example, according to information we have, a new stage of arms deliveries from the DPRK to Russia is expected allegedly before the end of March of 2025, so these days. So it is stated that it includes hundreds of thousands of 122 and 152mm shells and hundreds of ballistic missiles. That the latter sounds more interesting than usual. And you know that when summarizing everything we see right now, we see that the US is planning to stop supplying. We see that the Russians intensifying their production. We see some political crisis on the territory of Ukraine, and everything tells us that the Russians are going to start another and most likely the final and most likely major offensive operation with the purpose to defeat the Ukrainians completely and to take as much as possible territories before concluding a final statement or final agreement, truce agreement between Russian Federation in Ukraine. And this a major offensive operation from the Russian side most likely is going to start somewhere in the second part of March, right before April and right before Or maybe the Russians are going to begin this offensive after the 20th of April, when Ukrainians will refuse to support and to accept the ceasefire. Something like this. And obviously we understand that the Russians are going to be much more prepared in comparison with Ukraine. Now let's discuss what the Western countries and the United States of America is saying about the same situation. For example, Trump is disappointed with Zelensky and that his actions and rhetoric, his insults are unacceptable. That was stated by the White House. Furthermore, US Congress did not support the idea of new funding packages or military aid to Ukraine. That was stated by the House Speaker Johnson. He said that the US allies in Europe realized that the need to end the war in Ukraine, it has gone on too long. And so we see that armed deliveries to Ukraine are slowing down. The US does not plan to allocate new aid packages. That was stated by Trump's national security advisor Waltz and House Speaker Johnson. So the situation for Ukraine is very critical, and know that this morning we haven't managed to add this article to map, but during the day we're going to add this. Today we start receiving reports from different representatives of US authorities. They were asking and they suggested and proposed Zelensky to escape Ukraine as soon as possible if he wants everything to be finished well and maybe in his favor. Now let's discuss the situation on the ground, and first we're going to talk about the Sudzha direction. If you remember, during the previous few days we've been talking a lot about possible breakthrough of the border between Russia and Ukraine, and there were several, let's say, suggestions where exactly the Russians managed to do this, but this morning we start receiving more or less reliable updates from different mappers and some geolocations. So according to information we have, the Russians indeed managed to cross the border somewhere in the vicinity of the settlement by the name of Sverdlikova. And just during the previous 48 hours, the Russians managed to enter the outskirts of the settlement by the name of Basivka. So the main purpose of this attack that was carried out by the Russians during the previous several days was to cut the lines, to cut the road between Basivka and Novinka. And this morning we start receiving reports that the Russians began advancing from the settlement of Sverdlikova in the direction of Novinka with the purpose to take this small village under control. So summarizing everything, we see that currently the Russians are trying to take everything under control inside of this pocket. If the Russians are able to improve their position so much, they will be able to reduce the distance between their possible positions and the N07 road for just 4 kilometers, which is already the distance of fire control, the distance of FPV drone control, the distance of the beginning of cauldron for the armored forces of Ukraine on the territory of the Sudzha agglomeration. So the situation for the Ukrainians is very critical. We have a lot of videos that confirm Russian progress in this area. In this video we can see how the Russian troopers were moving in the southern direction, probably with the purpose to enter the settlement of Novinka. Furthermore, we have another video in the vicinity of Zhuravka. In this video we can see how the Russians landed in the area along the border, how the infantry, let's say, landed in this part of the border and took under control several positions. So maybe from this area the Russians are going to attack the settlement of Zhuravka. Anyway, let's wait and see what is going to be next, but we believe that this upcoming day, we're going to receive lots of very interesting updates from this territory. And once again, if the Russians are able to cut the Sudzha salient, and most likely they will try to do this before the beginning of the major offensive operation we've been talking about for the previous 5 minutes, then they will begin advancing deep inside the territory of Ukraine with the purpose to take under control the city of Suma, the city of Poltava, and many other settlements in this part of Ukraine. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the central Kupiansk direction. Today, different pro-Russian reliable sources reported that the settlement of Zelenyy Gai, this small village, was captured by the Russians. Let's wait and see additional updates. Maybe today the Minister of Defense of Russian Federation will confirm this. Now let's move further. As for the South Donetsk direction, the Pokrovsk direction, and the Dnipro direction, during the previous 24 hours, the Russians managed to improve their positions. According to information we have, small settlement of Nadezhdinka was also captured by the Russians. This information was provided us by different pro-Russian Ukrainian resources. As for different mappers, pro-Ukrainian and neutral mappers reported that as a result of offensive operation, the Russians managed to secure the settlement of Zaporozhye completely. So this village was captured, and not just the village, but also territories to the north, and currently the Russians have just one front line between Nadezhdinka and the settlement of Zaporozhye itself. So very important progress, and the clashes for the settlement of Preobrazhenka, Tarskoye, Bogdanovka are about to start. As for the Ulakli-Constantinople pocket, the second day in a row we haven't been receiving anything from this area. Just one small update in the eastern part of Ulakli based on the video published by the Ukrainian side. Most likely the video is already archived, and the episode that we can see in this video took place probably at the beginning of the Russian offensive operation. This is just another video of how the Ukrainians were trying to stop the Russian attack, and one of the episodes took place in this area. So we have adjusted the map based on the archive video. As for both villages, we don't know what exactly is happening there, but most likely the Russians are about to finish the battle for this territory. The most important updates are coming from the Velika Novosilovka direction, where the Russians managed to improve their positions on the western, eastern and the central flanks. According to information we have, the settlement of Novosilka was captured by the Russians completely. So maybe today the Minister of Defense of Russian Federation will confirm this information. Furthermore, according to information we have, the Russians managed to take under control several positions in the company's stronghold to the northwest of Velika Novosilovka. So another part, the central part of this stronghold, was captured by the Russians, as you can see. And the most important, the settlement of Novocherkaske was captured and secured by the Russians. Today the Russian sources published the video how the Russian soldiers were moving across the village and waving with the Russian flag. Based on this video, we have adjusted the map completely, and we have colored, let's call it like the southern part of the settlement, in Russian favor. There are still one street or two streets that we don't know for sure what exactly is happening there, but pro-Russian sources have adjusted these territories as well. As for now, we are waiting for additional geolocations. We believe that maybe the most northern part still remains under Ukraine control or in the gray zone. And now we understand that the next target, the next task for the Russians is to secure completely the company's stronghold and to maintain the lines between this company's stronghold and the settlement of Novocherkaske. So the Russians most likely will try to take under control everything that is located inside of this pocket. And when the Russians finish this operation, they're going to have a very powerful and very long foothold on the Ukrainian side of 0510 road and on the Ukrainian side of the river of Mokre Yali. And from these positions, from this front line, from this foothold that has the length of 14 kilometers, the Russians will begin offensive operation deep inside of the territory of Ukraine, which is also most likely is going to be a part of Russian major offensive that we're going to see in the early spring of 2025. And that's it for the short video. Military summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.